RSpace is a unique electronic lab notebook and data management platform that lets users record what they're doing in the lab, consistently store data safely and compliantly, but also link to data that may be outside of the system, acting as a digital hub for everything that you might do in the lab. RSpace works in any research sector, and it supports working with a range of different third-party tools that users can choose from. These tools can be customized by each user to fit their particular needs, and can be configured to work with their specific sorts of workflows. Today we'll be looking at a new prototype integration that we've built with Omero. Omero is a tool that's used by microscopists to hold images. Typically these would be very large images or very large sets of images that may be too large to conveniently store inside the ELN itself. I'm going to go back to the workspace and show you that here I've already created a notebook called Human Tissue Samples. Also, you'll see that on my computer, I've already opened up the Omero Insight application, where you can see that I've selected a folder of my images that I've updated previously. And you'll also see that over here, I can see the exact same thing in the Omero web interface, which is really very similar to what you would see in the standalone desktop application. Again, if I want here, I can switch this view to show either a list of the images that are already in Omero, or I can show them as small thumbnails like this. This is a very common tool for microscopists, and it allows them to store their images, see previews of those images, and record relevant metadata related to those images so that they can understand what they're looking at. So let's imagine that I'm a scientist who'd like to indicate to my downstream audience specifically what kinds of tissue samples I've been working with today. I'm going to say create, and then I'm going to create a new document based on a previous form that I built called a human tissue sample analysis form. And I can walk through this field, through this form, and I can add a number of different basic pieces of information, like, for example, the tissue type that we'll be looking at today. And I can add maybe the donor ID once I know it. I don't know that yet. I can say how many samples there'll be in this batch. Let's say there's 3. Here for the low-res thumbnails, I've already actually downloaded some PNG versions of the file from Omero, and I can simply drag and drop those onto RSpace to store those low-resolution images. So these are useful to understand what images I'm working with today, but they're not the original image. The original image are very high resolution and are much harder to add to RSpace in a timely way because they're so enormous they take a long time to move over the internet. So a better way to do that is to simply leave those images where they are in Omero and link to them to show my downstream audience where they are. So I'll open up this field that's been set up especially to record those images. I'll go ahead and click the Omero icon, and that will then load the Omero hierarchy so I can see what's in my Omero account. And you can see here this hierarchy of items is actually the exact same hierarchy that I could access directly through Omero like this if I wanted to. What I'll do now is I could show you that perhaps if I'm interested in a specific folder of images, I could locate that folder, select it with a checkbox and say insert, and that will then record in table form a link to that folder full of images. And that's fine, but honestly that's not that useful because most of the time as a microscopist I really need to see the actual images themselves. So what I'll do is I'll just delete that table and I'll start again. I'll say let's go back to Omero, and I'll tunnel down into the folder this time where I can actually see my 108 images that I've uploaded earlier. This page takes a moment to load because we're connecting to a server on the other side of the Atlantic where the images are stored in an Omero server hosted at the University of Dundee. Okay, so here are my images, and if I want to, I could go ahead and select 3 sets of images. These are actually all bundled up in the same TIFF file. Each TIFF file consists of 3 sub-images in the same file. But Omero allows you to see the individual different images within those sets, and I'll go ahead and I'll select all of them and I'll say insert, and that's then now going to record nicely a table for me here that shows me the primary image, an image that shows the location of the tissue on the slide, and a label that was on the slide that gives me more information about what's going on here. You'll notice that I can see in here that there's an identifying number, and I can actually read this off of here directly if I want to. I could even copy and paste this from here, and you can see now that I could go back to the earlier field here and paste in that information that I just pulled out from Omero and then save that. So now on this workflow, I've got information about my files. I've got some small thumbnails of them that allow me to see in detail what I'm looking for. And then here I have more intricate metadata telling me more about each individual image. And if I want to see the original, I can just click the link here, and that will take me back to Omero, where I can then log in with my username for that particular user. So let's go ahead and log in with the username and the password. And that will take me to the Omero system. Once I'm logged in, Omero will also select for me the exact image that I just clicked the link for. So you can see here it's selecting this image here, which corresponds to, in RSpace, the image that I just clicked on earlier. So in this case specifically, it's showing me this image here. This is extremely useful for microscopists because it helps them reference large images without having to move them to RSpace, but also gives them access to the critical metadata that's been stored in Omero when those images were first collected by themselves or perhaps by some previous researcher who's working on this project. Hopefully you found this demonstration today interesting. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us and ask for more details about this new integration.